Ancient Rome. We're going to recap some things that you have learned about the geography of ancient Rome and hopefully add a little bit of information to what you've learned as well. Okay, Rome began on a really large peninsula of Italy. Remember, a peninsula is a body of land that's surrounded by water on three sides. It's really similar to Greece. Both of them are located along the Mediterranean Sea. Because it's a peninsula, it has access to all of the different seas around it, which allows it to expand into this big empire. But unlike or different from Greece, Italy has more areas for farming. It has more large valleys and open plains, flat land for growing different crops. Here's a map of Italy. Notice the country we're studying, ancient Rome, is located right here in the middle of Italy. It's a great location, and we're going to talk about why in a little bit. Italy is one of the easiest countries to find in Europe because it looks like a lady's boot. You see the toe of the boot kicking the island of Sicily right down here. And then the leg of the boot where the Apennine Mountains are, that's right here, the leg. And then right here is the heel of the lady's boot on the far right. There are two major mountain ranges in Italy, the Alps and the Apennines. Both of them have an impact on Italy and so ultimately impacted ancient Rome and how it developed. The Alps to the north, they separate Italy from the rest of Europe. They offer some protection, but not total protection because there are these natural passes where people can still get through to invade. The Apennines, they run the length of Italy. Remember, that's the leg of the boot. But they don't hinder or get in the way of trade or travel. People can still move around and trade with one another within the country. So trade and contact with other civilizations was possible for the people living in Italy and specifically in ancient Rome, but invasion was also this constant threat. So they had to develop a really strong military, which we'll get into in a couple weeks. Remember, Italy looks like a lady's boot. We talked about the two mountain ranges, the Alps and the Apennines. Can you find them? Good. The Alps are up here, and then the Apennines run the leg of the boot. The first people to settle in Rome were the Latins. They picked this spot because it had a really mild climate, really good farmland, and it was strategic for trade and travel with the seas that were surrounding it. The people who settled there, they farmed the fertile plain at the base or the bottom of the hills, but they built their houses on the hilltops so that they could defend themselves if an enemy were to attack. And attacked they were. Around 600 BC, the Etruscans invaded the Latins' little town of Rome and they took over. They drained all the marshes, they took all the water out near Rome so that they had more land where they could build and more area to farm. Because they did this, the effect of that, Rome was able to begin to grow into a larger city. Here's a picture of the Alps in northern Italy today. So beautiful. And the Apennines in central Italy. Okay, the role of geography in ancient Rome. So we've got the mountain ranges, and now we have the next thing, which is the seas. There are different seas that lie all around the peninsula of Italy. The Adriatic Sea is to the east, and the Mediterranean is to the south and to the west. These seas mean that Italy has these really long coastlines. Think like California in the United States, which has a coastline from the very top to the very bottom. But unlike Greece, that had lots of natural harbors or places for boats to go and dock, Italy didn't have that. In Italy, most of the rivers are going to be short and really shallow, so they're not good for traveling or transportation of people or goods. Unlike, say, the Nile River in Egypt, where they were able to use it to transport goods and people all up and down the river. People started turning inland for trade rather than to the sea as the Greeks had, because it was not as easy for them to have multiple ships docking in the different harbors. They just didn't have the harbors like Greece did. The coastlines made invasion easier because people could easily access Italy because of the coast on three different sides. It made it easier for them to be attacked. Again, another reason they're going to have to eventually create a really strong military. Okay, here's a little review. Number one, what physical landform is the country of Italy? Hopefully you remember the name of it. Second, what body of water separates Italy from Africa? You're going to have to look carefully at the map. And here's a clue. Africa's right here. So what body of water is separating Italy, Sicily is part of that, from Africa? Hopefully you got it right. The Mediterranean Sea separates Italy from Africa, and Italy is a peninsula that happens to be shaped like a boot. The land, the soil, and the vegetation. Most of the land in Italy is foothills and mountains, except for the valleys that are up in the northern part of Italy. When we think foothills, think like Charlotte. We're part of the Piedmont and the foothills area of North Carolina. So as you go closer to the mountains, the Greensboro area, it gets way more hilly, but not quite mountainous. That's what a foothill is. Most of the soil is going to be really sandy. It's going to erode easily. It's going to wash away with water or blow away in the wind. It's really best suited for animals to graze along there, not necessarily for good farming. The northern valleys, however, are fertile enough for the people to grow different grains. So grains would be one of the crops that Italy would have grown in the northern region. So not necessarily Rome that we're studying, but to the north of Rome. So it would have been something they would have traded for. Most other areas of Italy were really good for growing vegetables, grapes, olives, and citrus fruits like oranges and lemons. The Romans were mostly self-sufficient or able to provide for themselves in early history, but they did turn to trade to supplement or add to their food supply as the empire got bigger and they had more people that they had to provide for. Here's some pictures of what it looks like in central Italy. Just like ancient Greece, Italy had difficulties farming in some areas because of the rocky land and the Mediterranean climate. We're going to learn what crops they grew and how they used their land to provide for their needs. So the climate. The climate impacts how the people of Italy lived. They have this really Mediterranean climate, which means the temperatures are pretty mild. It's nice to be outside. It's like springtime or warmer weather without a lot of rain, except for during the winter. During the winter, they had plentiful precipitation, which means they had more rain than they did during the rest of the time. The climate being warmer made it possible for them to grow those citrus fruits, the grapes, the olives, and vegetables, very similar to Greece. So, like the Greeks, the Romans spent a lot of time outdoors socializing and trading ideas. The weather was just perfect for being outside together, talking to each other, trading ideas, trading goods if needed. The mild temperatures also made it good for growing the citrus, the grapes, the olives. These items became major exports for trade for Rome as well. Other people wanted these grapes and these olives that the Italians and the Romans were growing. So here's a recap. Advantages of Rome's geography. It was close to the Mediterranean Sea and located on several ancient trade routes, so good opportunity to trade with other groups of people. Remember, this location along the Mediterranean Sea also made it easy for them to be invaded. It was located next to the Tiber River, which is a major river in ancient Rome. And we know from studying other ancient civilizations that being located along a river is imperative. It's super important to the people first establishing their communities. It had really large plains, making it super easy to farm. And the Italian peninsula made it easy for the Roman ships to go out to other lands around the sea, which made it easier for them eventually to conquer lands, gain new territory, and grow their empire. The Alps and the Apennine mountain ranges both help to protect Rome. Okay, here's a question. The Latins chose the location of Rome as their settlement for what reason? To access the ocean, mountains, and rivers? Because it had good farmland, access to the Adriatic Sea, and mountainous area? Because it had good farmland, mild climate, and a strategic location? Or none of the above? Hopefully you picked C. It's the correct answer. The Latins knew that the mild climate and the good farmland would be imperative or really important for growing their crops. This really strategic or well thought out location was really important to maintaining their civilization. Some fun facts for you before I give you your final assignment for today. Did you know that Italy is home to some of the most active volcanoes? This picture here is of Mount Etna. It's located on the east coast of the island of Sicily. It is the highest volcano in Europe, and it's erupted over 100 times since 1500 BC. It is still a super populated place. That means lots of people still live there. Do you have any ideas why? If you guessed it's because the volcanic ash creates really fertile soil for farming, you would be correct. Lots of people still live there and farm there because the volcanic ash creates really good soil for that. Mount Etna actually erupted this week. This is a photo from the eruption that took place on April the 19th of this year, 2020, at 7:30 in the morning in Sicily. After you finish your assignment for this week, which I'm getting ready to tell you about, take some time to Google Mount Etna and any other volcanoes in Europe. See if you can find the most famous volcanic eruption in Italy's history. We're going to learn about it next week. Okay, your final assignment. On a piece of paper, scrap paper, whatever you can find, I want you to write 3 to 5 sentences telling me about the geography of Rome and the impact the geography had on the people who lived there. Basically, you're summarizing everything you just learned about in this video. In Canvas, you're going to go to the assignment for today and you're going to click Submit Assignment. It's going to ask you to record a video or to do a media upload of yourself reading your paragraph. Your paragraph should tell me what are some physical features of Rome and Italy's landscape? What was the climate of Italy like? How did the people adapt to the physical features and the climate and use them to their advantage? What were some disadvantages to Rome's geography and climate? Remember to have an introductory sentence and some type of conclusion sentence. I can't wait to see your videos. Next week, get ready to learn about a very famous volcanic eruption that happened in Italy. Take care, guys.